Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And I'm happy to say that our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore, is back with us today. How's it going today, Bill?
Well, I'll tell you what, you spend all your time traveling, sitting on your butt, and you're still tired. So,
Yes.
of course, the last 3 days we had very little sleep. We had to go back for a my wife's family. Her brother passed, so that's always stressing. And travel. Our plane was supposed to have left like at 6:45 or something in the evening, and it didn't leave till I don't know, darn near 10. Well, no, Denver time it was well after nearly 9 o'clock. So, yeah, so all those joys of travel,
You know,
nearly flat tires on our car, our rental car, little things like that. So,
you know, I like traveling east, you know, to go somewhere like going to Florida or something like that, go into that Eastern time zone, and
yep,
then coming back because it doesn't seem
you're
like
gain,
you,
you're
yeah, you
gaining
get that
time,
hour back on the way
right,
back. But
right.
when you go to like the West Coast, go to California or Washington or something like that, it's 2 hour time change going west.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you come back, no matter what time you leave, you're getting home at about 1 a.m. And it is
Exactly 12 o'clock. Well, actually, 12:02 last night for us. Yeah,
when you got to the house.
when we got to the house.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just saying, well, invariably that last flight out always seems to be delayed.
Yep.
And then, you're waiting for your luggage at the Omaha airport, which is really fast. Okay. You ever
Yeah.
fly through Omaha? Don't worry about them losing your luggage. They don't lose it in Omaha. They might lose it some other places, but they're not going to lose it here. It's too small of an airport.
Yeah.
But it's just,
But that
always
but that
awkward
being said, that's going through a major renovation and it is chaos down there right now.
with no
So
end in sight. With no end in
with
sight.
no end in sight. That's what's a joy going to Spokane because Spokane is like, is easy and open, and we've zipped through the security checkpoint, and boy, going
All right.
going into you can't even get up next to the airport after 5 o'clock in the morning, which is when we had to be there because you had to walk from inside the parking. It was just a mess. So anyway, I'm happy to be back. Thank you everybody for tuning in while I was gone. I see we had Bobby on, and then we had. I got to ask you, was that I didn't? I started to watch the interview last night while I was sitting in Denver, and then struck up a conversation with another guy whose flight was delayed, and so I didn't get to finish it. So is he related to Ferrari?
No.
Oh,
So
okay.
Ferrari basically means farrier. Like what a farrier is,
Oh,
right?
sure, iron
Somebody that
maker.
shoes
Yeah,
horses. Somebody
yeah,
that shoes
yeah.
horses, right?
Yep.
So he said it's the Italian version of Smith. Okay,
Okay.
and he said
Okay.
it's the most where he's from. It's the most common name in the city and all that. And he was
Right.
joking because he worked at Ferrari for a few years, and he was working on new cars that were experimental at the time,
Right.
and sometimes it worked to his advantage when
To
they
be
had
a
to do
Ferrari.
something. Yeah, yeah. But he
Oh,
said mostly he was the butt of jokes.
that's the reason for the prancing horse.
Hmm.
A,
Yeah,
a farrier, right? A guy that puts
right. A
hooves on
horseshoer.
horses. Yeah, yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, when I used to be with the Shelby County Sheriff's Department in Tennessee, we patrolled a lot of the outside county, and an amazing number of deputies had their horses shoed on Saturdays. And that was usually when I was a volunteer deputy. And that was when I would volunteer to be on Saturdays. And I couldn't tell you how often I ended up at a place where we were getting
Horses shoes.
a horse
Is that
shoes replaced.
was that their personal mounts or were
Yes,
they
the
police
personal
mounts?
horses. No, they
Oh,
weren't
okay.
police mounts. These were their personal horses.
Okay.
I was like, how do I keep ending up riding with somebody who
Right.
needs their horse shoed today? You know, um, and it happened a few times. On day shift on a Saturday in the county, not much happened. If you were in the
Right.
Memphis city limits, it'd have been a different story. But
Right.
out in the county, man, you'd go for a couple of hours before there'd be a call
Right.
sometimes. And we patrolled a huge area, but there always seemed to be time to stop and see the guy shoeing your horse.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah. So, anyways, that was
Well,
really
prevent any crimes. Is there counterfeit horseshoes or?
yeah, yeah, making sure there was no horse thieves
Right, exactly.
around where that was
Yeah,
going on
yeah,
too. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. It's just funny. And it's like, really, this is what we're doing today.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
but anyways, I wanted to start out talking a little bit about Rivian. So, Newsweek, you had this article about Newsweek. It says key decisions in the face of adversity have helped Rivian turn a profit. I'm just like, what?
Mm,
Rivian turned a profit? So, anyways, we're another one of those gross profit situations. So
okay,
apparently,
right.
they've managed to turn a corner. They're still losing money on every vehicle they sell, but apparently they are managing to take all that sunk cost, and now the cost of producing
Right.
the truck and the cost of the labor is less than what they're selling the vehicle for.
They're
So
losing money in the right direction.
yeah, yeah, it seems to be very encouraging. You know, I mentioned yesterday that there's some people that are given a stock target of $10 on Rivian for a while, and I thought that was interesting. But Rivian's sitting on a lot of cash, and their production numbers for the last quarter were lower than normal. For the first
Mm,
quarter,
yeah.
they had produced like 13,000 vehicles, or delivered 13,600 vehicles last year in the first quarter. And this year they only delivered like 8,200. But Rivian's been talking about how they've been having supply chain problems.
Right, yeah. Somebody
And
screwed up ordering the motors or something like that, if I remember correctly.
yeah, pretty big screw up apparently that
Yeah,
caused them
yeah,
to
yeah,
deliver one third less vehicles.
yeah.
But so anyways, they got that $5.8 billion in from Volkswagen. Yeah, they're apparently sitting on. A subsidiary of the company also received a $6.5 billion loan from the federal government to finance the development and construction of its new 9 million square foot electric vehicle manufacturing facility near Social Circle, Georgia, where
Right,
they expect to assemble 400,000 electric vehicles annually, starting with the R2 and R3s. Well, that
right.
would be that magic number that you're talked about, right? The
Yep,
400,000.
yep.
And maybe that's why they're using that figure, because they heard Jigger talk on our show about
Yeah,
that.
sure.
And, I'm sure that was what it was. And, but they said that they actually had a gross profit of $170 million in the fourth quarter of 2024 in the maturing business model of the Rivian brand in a battery electric vehicle adverse environment, or why RJ Scaringe is named Newsweek's 2025 Executive Disruptor of the Year.
Wow,
Oh,
because he's going against the tide or something here, actually figuring
um,
out.
he's
Huh,
figuring out something. I
yeah.
find that quite. Yeah, here's the cover. Oh,
Oh, there you go. World's greatest auto disruptors. Okay, well, I'm glad he made the cover and not the other gentleman who usually make. But he's getting enough publicity anyway, so
yeah. Elon probably isn't that upset
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, yeah,
He probably didn't notice. He'd probably say, "What's Newsweek?"
yeah,
That's what Elon would say.
yeah. What's news?
What's Newsweek? Does that people still read that? Yeah, it's kind of like I haven't read a newspaper in a long time, but I saw one blowing by out my window a couple days ago. I was like, "Where'd that newspaper come from?" No, we
Yeah,
we when it's really windy and the wind's coming from the north, I get these trash storms here that come from Lowe's and Kohl's and a couple of
right.
other maybe
They're
that Walmart.
the bends. Yeah, the storage
Well, I'll
bends
see
behind.
I'll see plastic trash bags, full size cardboard boxes, different things
Mm-hmm.
just go blowing by. And when I go
Right.
for a walk, I never figure out where they ended up because they just
Yeah.
keep going. I don't know
Yeah.
how far south they blow, but they go a
I,
long ways.
I try. Of course, I'm getting too old to do this anymore. But I try. When we get those, we'll get this plastic, blowing up our street, going
Hmm.
south at 20 miles an hour, and I try to catch it, and then the wind currents carry it around me, and I miss it, and it keeps going, and it's going faster than I can walk, and certainly can't run anymore, and so I don't know where it ends up. Somewhere south, maybe Kansas. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. Um, oh, we want to worry about the Associated Press blowing around? Well, maybe not. Maybe not. Um, yeah. Well, I don't know if they're the ones blowing all the trash by my house or not, but it is just kind of weird though. I'll be looking out the rear window and
There it
uh,
goes. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, anyways, so let's move on to Tesla whistleblower story. So
Okay.
a whistleblower wins a legal battle and fight against Elon Musk. So an engineer, Christina Ballin, lost her job after she raised safety concerns in 2014. 24, so we're 10 years ago, about a design flaw which could affect the car's braking. Her defamation claim against the firm seemed to have run out of road when a judge confirmed an arbitration decision dismissing her case, but a panel of appeal judges in California has reversed this decision in her favor.
So she's
Now,
been fighting this battle for a decade?
yes, yes.
Wow.
She told BBC News now she wants to face Elon Musk and Tesla in open court. Tesla hasn't responded to a request for comment. And she believes the case will now go back to square one and new
Oh,
proceedings can be launched.
oh man.
Wow.
That's
Um,
dedication. That girl should have been kept because boy, she's got dedication.
the engineer was once so prominent at Tesla, her initials were engraved on the batteries inside Model S vehicles.
Amazing.
Um, yeah, but
But it didn't
she's
make Tesla look good, and so Elon said out, I gather.
Yeah. Oh, and she's in stage 3B. She's in remission from stage 3B breast cancer. And her biggest worry was she may
Oh,
not be able to live to see her final day in court.
yeah, wow. Of course, that's got to be in part because of the stress.
And her,
That's
yeah, oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Part of the thing is, what her hazard was, she said the carpets were curling underneath some pedals, creating a safety hazard. Managers
okay.
rebuffed her concerns, became hostile, and she lost her job. And she won a wrongful dismissal case. This turned out to be the start of a long journey through the courts. She was publicly accused by Tesla of using its resources for a secret project, accusations which amounted to embezzlement, a crime under U.S. law. She's consistently denied the accusation and decided to bring a defamation case against the firm. Oh, in 2019. So this defamation started 5 years ago, not 10 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah,
I want
yeah.
to clear my name. I wish Elon Musk had the decency to apologize. Um,
Never. Nope, not in his nature.
a court decided Miss Balin's case should be subject to arbitration for a contract she signed while working for Tesla. The arbitrator found in favor of the firm and Musk, dismissing her claims due to California's statute of limitations, meaning too much time had passed since the alleged defamatory statements were made. Yeah. Um, Let me see. Miss Balin appealed the decision, and judges from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit found in her favor, in effect deciding the California court did not have the jurisdiction to make its judgment. Hmm. Well, anyways, looks like she's going to be in court for another 5 years, probably.
Oh
Got
God. Well, I hope it works out for her. That's
yeah, yeah. Today is. Oh, did you check out that Cybertruck video I sent you?
let's see that. Oh, that was the cartoon, right?
The
What if a
cartoon, yeah,
Cybertruck is used in a Hollywood horror movie with a guy with a ice hockey mask on chasing these two guys and standing? Yes, I saw it. Yes, it's cute. In fact,
yeah.
I
I
think
thought that.
I put a link to it on our feed. So
Yeah, it's pretty funny, that's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Let me see here. See if people can relate to this. Let me see, because it's a short,
it's very
so I can.
short. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
let me.
20 seconds or something. Yeah, share it with the audience if they're not aware of it.
Yes.
Another flaw in the Cybertruck design, it doesn't recognize mass murderers.
Go, 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 go! I'm trying! All right, dude.
Uh-oh.
This is what you get for driving a Cybertruck. Murdered alert. Murdered alert.
Yeah, that's the beginning right there. Yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
The truck will not recognize. Well, I guess it was the Model S or whatever, Model E, whatever the guy was driving. Model E? No, not Model E. What am I saying? The one where they, has got the big artificial, road and it drives through the, the placard or the thing that's across it. It wouldn't stop. You know what I'm referring to. I think. I hope.
Yeah. Trying to get one to hit a berm.
Right. Well, no, trying to get it to go through you paint the road like a Wile E. Coyote.
Oh yeah.
Right thing,
Yeah,
and
see if it'll go through.
right, the Audi stops and the Tesla just goes bursting through it and hitting the little kid dummy on the other side. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was well, but they also said it disengaged the full self-driving right before, but you'd think it would stop. I mean, there's lots of cars that'll auto stop now if there's going to be an impact. So, who knows? I've had some strange situations even at the airport in Omaha where my car thought I was going to hit the parking garage or something.
Yeah.
Like going, because the overhang.
Right.
Sometimes it picks that up, sometimes it doesn't. All right. Man, we're really taking a crap on Tesla today, it looks like. All right. And none of this is Doge related, so this is all different. All right. Elon Musk shuts down internal Tesla analysis that showed Robotaxi would lose money.
Yeah.
So this is
That's really interesting. That one, his people were telling him, "Don't do it. Let's stick with the $25,000, Tesla that we were hoping to build." And he said, "No, let's turn that into a." I guess his method to his madness was, if we just sell the car to a consumer, the $25,000 car, we just make what our profit is. But if we sell it to somebody who then can put it back to work instead of sitting for, 12, 15 hours a day, let's put it to work as a cyber taxi, and then we can make a cut of that. And so it will theoretically take and create a revenue source for us that lasts for years. So
Right.
I guess that makes sense. But his staff did the numbers, and all you can do is project some of this stuff. How many people are willing to give up their car, and how many people are willing to get in a car that belongs to somebody else, right? And then it didn't even touch on the issue of insurance. Who's responsible, right? So the staff was telling me, no, don't do it. And he said, nope, we're going to go with the cyber cab. And now he's finding out that the guy that he helped put in office has put a tariff on the material coming out that helps him build his car. So he's put that on hold now. So I don't know what they're going to reveal in July, or what is it, June? He's supposed to, July, he's supposed to reveal the cyber cab, or start it or whatever.
So here's one of the things that's an issue for Tesla. They're valued as a technology company and not as a car company. And this is people's arguments that they're just a car company. But you and I both know they're also in energy and other spaces, right?
Yeah.
So
boring tunnels and
yeah, I don't know if that's part of Tesla or not, though. But
it's not part of Tesla, but it's part of his overall. It's
Right.
like SpaceX. It's one of his other
Right. But
gigs.
what I'm getting at is, so a big part of Tesla is selling data. So they sell data to insurance companies. There's a lot of things that they use as other types of income that the other car companies really haven't capitalized like they do. Plus, they have the carbon credits and all the other things that they're selling. But to just sell the Model 2, which everybody loves that idea of buying a $25,000 Tesla, is that doesn't keep it as a technology company.
Right.
Okay, that
Keeps
goes
it
back
as a
to
car
just selling.
company.
Just sells as a car company, like you're saying. We just get paid on selling a car.
Right.
But his thing is we're taking this another couple levels farther, and that you now have this autonomous car that you can rent. Let it
Right.
go work for you.
It's become a TAAS, Transportation as a Service
Hmm.
company, and his investors are the owners who absorb the cost of buying the car. And then he gets a cut of all the business they do in his behalf. You
Yeah.
know, okay, I guess that is a model. That's transportation as a service.
Well, I think the idea is they're going to sell all these cars, and they're going to make money on the car, and then they're
Right?
also going to make money on the service, just like an Uber or Lyft does.
Exactly. So they're going to make, what was the number? They make 5 or 6 times what they would have by just selling the car outright and, letting the customer drive it and, sit in the garage for 12 hours a day. So,
Yeah, well, they're saying it's going to be a major revenue generator for the people that own it. My thing is, if the car is really a
yeah,
huge success, then there's going to be so many of them that there's going to be too many
there's going
out
to be
there to
two.
go make
Yep.
that money.
Right. So instead of cars sitting off and away from the road, now you've got more traffic filling the road, all these autonomous vehicles running around with people inside them trying to get whatever they
Well,
anticipate using it for.
you're not going to have any more. You're not going to really have more cars. It's just, instead of having a car with somebody driving it, you're going to have an electric car going and picking them up and taking them to wherever.
Yeah, but
Um,
the schedule of most cars is it sits at home 8, 12 hours a day. It then occupies the next hour getting to somewhere. And
mhm.
then at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that mass of people till about 7 drive the cars back. So there's this huge window when, other than vehicles, there are people going to dental appointments and all that kind of stuff. There's not that same surge. We see that here in
Mhm.
Omaha where, go down 96th Street, and it's bumper to bumper people trying to get home starting right around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah,
I
you're right, Owen. If less people take the bus, there will be more cars.
Right.
Now, but I guess what I'm kind of getting at is you only have so many people who do ride share or taxi, right? So that number is probably not going to change. It's just going to shift from being a lot of people that drive Uber and Lyft now being replaced by an EV that's driving itself.
Right.
I don't, I
Being
still
replaced
don't
by a
believe,
robot.
yeah, I still don't completely. So Waymo, for instance, you still have to get picked up at certain pickup points.
Hmm.
Okay, which works well if you're going from the airport to a hotel,
Right.
for instance. Okay, but it's I don't think they're really set like to pick you up from your house and then drop you off at another house kind of thing. They still operate kind of like a bus that has more options.
Yeah. But
Okay,
fewer seats.
yeah, but fewer seats, and
Yeah.
especially in this case, the Robotaxi is only going to have 2 seats. Although I don't think they have a crazy amount of people that are looking for more than one or two people to ride in a
Right.
taxi or ride share, anyways. But so it's not going to fill. When like a group of four is trying to go out or whatever, it's probably not going to fill that
Right.
niche. I think there's still going to be a pretty big need for things like Uber and Lyft and taxis, but
Yeah,
it's not going to be the same.
because you will want somebody in that seat at the steering wheel.
I don't
That's
know. I'd be happy to take it from the airport to my hotel.
that's one thing, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not having ridden in an autonomous vehicle yet. I haven't driven been in a Tesla and set it in on, autopilot and let it go do its thing. I haven't done that. So I'm one of those old fashioned guys. I like to have control of that wheel. And from what his staff were projecting, they didn't either think that there were going to be enough people that would make the venture, successful financially. That's why they were saying, no, just stick with building the car. And of course, he runs the company, and they do what they tell him to do. So,
Well, okay. So here's one of the things that I've talked about a few times. That's the difference between, because Musk owns all these different companies. The only one that's public is Tesla. Okay. And so there's issues. Is he fairly affecting shareholder value? So we discussed, like with Doge, we think that's a negative to shareholder value, right? So that I don't think it's right that he's stayed in his position with Tesla while he's doing this, because it's having a negative effect on the company
yes,
and therefore the people that own it. Okay.
and let's
But
talk about when we get a chance here. Let's talk about the shifting attitudes in the northern Idaho area towards him. Look,
okay. But
keep going.
thing is, when it comes to this topic we're talking about here with the Robotaxi versus the Model 2, he's doing what he feels is best for the shareholders. Because if the Robotaxi, in my mind, causes the value of Tesla to be worth more than a contemporary car manufacturer. And that's part of it, is he has to keep that image of it being a tech company and valued as a tech company versus being valued
Right.
simply as a car
Instead
company.
of being $200, $300 valuation, it would drop down to 10, 15,
So
$20 valuation. Yeah.
while it may seem like they'd make more money maybe selling the Model 2s, maybe they'd be more profitable in the short term, I think that the idea is that the Robotaxi will have a greater effect on keeping the multiples in the stock than the other. And
But
so,
this all assumes that he can solve the problem of autonomous driving, which he hasn't. And we know
not
that
yet.
Tesla, Mercedes, and Waymo and the others have much more advanced systems than he has.
Well, and we know that's true, but I'm just saying that he sees that this is the future, and why waste it? At the same time, I'd still like to see some $25,000 Teslas that aren't used.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, I,
anyway, we'll see how it unfolds. So,
yeah. Okay. So let's talk about Northern Idaho. What's going on in Northern Idaho?
okay, so Northern Idaho is sort of uh, has been a hotbed of very pro right wing. In fact, there's movements to actually split off parts of Washington State and parts of Oregon and mix it with Idaho and create this sort of super state of its own that's, very right wing in its views towards things. The guys that are looking to, grow marijuana and, live a life of freedom and things like that, move to, northern Idaho. And so, but now that being said, I was in Moscow, and Moscow is a liberal in that sense, university town, and people riding bikes everywhere, and all kinds of interesting things, signs I saw there. But sitting with family members coming in, to be part of the grieving and the, final days of, for my brother-in-law. Wow. If you lose northern Idaho as Trump supporters, I think you're in serious trouble. And at least within the people that I was talking to, who are friends of the family or family members, they are not a happy group of campers with what's going on, not at all. So I found that very interesting, because sort of traditionally it's a very, conservative community. And wow, I'm talking to guys that are, former loggers, and my brother-in-law, dug pipelines and, all over the West, and they're not at all happy with what's going on in D.C. and among their local. The one gentleman I was talking to is having some issues with immigration. Now he's Israeli,
Mhm.
But that's not where the problem. The problem lies with what happened with his wife, and I won't go into details. But anyway, and I said, well, go have a talk with your congressman, about this. And he says, you know, I'm going to go in and talk to a, right wing Trump supporting congressman. They ain't going to listen to me on this issue, you know. So there, I was surprised what's going on there with respect to the attitude of people. And then driving back up 95 from the Pullman area back up to Spokane, I was, you wonder. Well, another part of this whole conversation is because they knew I was involved with electric cars. They're asking me about, well, what electric car do you think I should get? This kind of thing. And my niece, by marriage, she's thinking, I want to get her a car, but I'm not sure what I want to get, and I think I want to go with a hybrid, and those conversations. And then the Israeli guy who has an import-export business over the border in Washington State. He's saying, you know what, I think I'm going to get an electric bike. Do you have any recommendations on electric bike? Right? Because why drive my SUV when I only have a few miles to go? And then I'm sitting at the airport in Denver, at one of their desks over in the Southwest terminal, working away, and the guy comes up and we start a conversation. He says, yeah, I'm kind of also interested in electric bikes, and you got any thoughts on what I should look at and recommend? So that was a positive thing. So we're seeing this shift that's taking place in an area that you normally think, other side of the Cascades you'd expect. On the west side of the Cascades, on the east side of the Cascades, not so much. So I was kind of pleasantly surprised.
I think people are coming around to the whole EV thing a little more. It's like we talk about that neighbor effect as more and more people, as they see more and more of them around, it starts seeming kind of normalized. Then, I think that's a lot of it. Is just the normalization of
and they're
EVs.
beginning to recognize the value, of the technology over the current, dominant technology of internal combustion engine. They begin to understand. I mean, I would sit down and explain, okay, my typical, take a dollar bill, right, that you're going to put into the gas pump to fill up the car, and then rip 75 cents worth of it away and burn it. And then take another portion of that, and by the time you get down to what Rocky Mountain Institute says actually moves the wheels of the car, you're talking the last 10 cents. All the rest of that has been lost in heat and waste. And then I said, now take the same dollar bill or another dollar bill and rip off the 15 cents of it that is lost by battery conversion, electricity conversions, and all those things that are part of an EV, and you still got 85 cents of the money you spent propelling that vehicle. Big difference. Big difference.
It is. And I don't know too many people wouldn't like to save money at the gas pump. It's just like we said. We know there's still some little issues with EVs, and they're getting better, and we keep, Bill, you and I have been doing this show for about a year and a half now, or a little more than that.
Yep.
And it's been really interesting, just the big changes we've seen in that time span of all the different technologies, even the various upgrades to superchargers, and the amount that the batteries have come down in price and things like that. And
the fact that the batteries are lasting longer than they anticipated they were going to last, things like that, and the degradation level. You had a gentleman yesterday.
Voltist.
The Voltist guy. What's not Donatelli, but anyway.
Niccolo Ferrari.
Nicola Ferrari, yeah. Had him on, and that's his business model is, how healthy are the batteries?
Yeah, and you know what? He didn't even really think about it, because I was saying, man, this is an amazing side hustle, because so far he's been selling his $400 device to dealers. I'm like, man, anybody could go do this, right? Yeah. I mean, do you need a shop? I mean, anybody could do this. Our friend Alex, out at EV Auto in Salt Lake, he was listed on there as one of the places that does this as a mobile service. But I'm like, man, anybody could do this here. It's like, oh yeah,
Sure.
somebody I guess who was an
I've
Uber
had,
driver could do this as a side gig.
I should get, because I've thought about that as a side gig. Well, let's see
Hmm.
what can I do just in case the old SSR or SSA, I guess it is technically.
Hmm.
If that check doesn't come, well, checks don't come through anymore, right? He did away with that.
Hmm.
Now you got to have direct deposit, which fortunately I have. But if that starts to go away, maybe I need to do a side gig of testing EV batteries for people,
There
right?
you
And
go.
charging them, $50 to charge or whatever.
I really didn't get into it much, but his revenue model seems to just be selling those $400 kits. He didn't talk any about any back end revenue model or anything
Right,
like that.
right.
And maybe they have some plans down the road. They're just kind of in their infancy. But I thought it was interesting that his co-founder, who actually is the CEO of the company,
Hmm.
came from like 12 years at Lamborghini, and he came from Ferrari. And
Well, he had time at Ducati too, right?
yeah, he had time. That was,
That
I think, like
was
an internship or something.
internship. He had an internship at
Yeah,
Ducati,
after
testing to come up with the best butt seat for
for the
the
bikes. Yeah,
best saddle
he,
for the bike. Yeah,
yeah. He has like a master's degree in um, auto racing engineering or something like
right,
that.
right.
It was
Yeah,
very
yeah.
specific to, you know, motorsports. Probably something they only offer in Italy. But I just thought it was fascinating. I thought that was just really cool because he's getting to try out all these Ducati bikes, and then
Yeah.
he's riding around in the test Ferraris. He was saying they're the ones that have the like camouflage patterns on them so they don't photograph well.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
and
right.
it's like, well, that's still pretty cool. You're riding around in a Ferrari all the time at work, you
Yeah.
know. And but yeah, he's got a good idea, and it'd be interesting to see how it plays out. I'd be curious to have seen some of his reports, how they would kick out if you went and you tested like used cars for sale and what you'd see,
Uh huh.
doing that. But I wish him luck. I think he's certainly in a space that,
There's
you know,
plenty of room for expansion. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and we know that eventually the EV space in the United States will 8 to 10x what it is today, sometime over the next 20 years. So, he's in
And
there in a
he's
good spot.
young.
Yeah,
By the
yeah.
time he's our age, no, by the time he's your age, hopefully, he can afford his own Ferrari.
There you go. There you go. Well, I don't, anyways, let's talk about Paris.
Yeah,
So,
this is interesting because this comes to mind because of the conversation I was having with this friend of the family who's an Israeli. He says he has he was born in Morocco. The family moved to France. Then the family moved to Israel. And he says, I have lived through 4 wars and I fought in 2 of them.
mhm,
And as part of, he was in the infantry of the Israeli Defense Force. So, and he was the one interested in the electric bike. Maybe I should get an electric bike too. Oh, and the other thing that's interesting, he actually already has an EV.
mhm.
He has a Clark electric forklift.
Oh,
He said it's fabulous. It's fantastic. I used to have this old beat up gasoline powered thing, and this is actually how he met the what would I call him? The husband of my wife's sister-in-law. Does that make
mhm,
sense? Anyway, so that's how they met because he needed to have that forklift repaired. And this gentleman who is basically his business was doing maintenance on farm equipment, particularly farm tractors. The beautiful thing about going out there is right now the winter wheat is starting to green. And if you've ever been to the Palouse country, Palouse or however they pronounce that part of Washington and Idaho, it is just these giant rolling hills of, basically it was just dust that was blown and created over the decades and millennia. And so you have these giant rolling hills, and these guys farm that. And these
mhm.
banks are like, 10, 15 or so, maybe even 20% slopes. And I think, how do you guys farm that because we're here in the Midwest. We're used to, you know, pool table, billiard table fields, right?
Right.
There might be an odd hill there, but this is all hill country, and it's all these giant humps. And these guys are, in fact, we were coming back on one of the rural routes we took that really winds through that area, and there's this guy, in this giant hill. I think he was probably sowing summer wheat or whatever they call that, but just gorgeous. So anyway, so that's a big, huge agricultural area. Huge agricultural area. In fact, that's what I think. Apart from the university, that's about. Well, no, there's some other things going on, but I won't talk about those. But anyway, so that's how he met this the Israeli guy, and he was interested in the EVs, and now I've completely lost track of where I was going. But anyway, it was interesting conversation about how EVs are getting. In his case, interest starts off with a forklift. And he says it's made a world of difference in his operation. So
I had an electric forklift in the 90s, so yeah, I'm familiar with it. In fact, I've never owned a forklift that wasn't electric.
Right.
So anyways, yeah, it's just it was a pain because I had to have three-phase electric for it. So much higher end electric juice. But anyways,
hey, Rez,
so
you got a good deal on that. It looks like he's talking about the Bolt that he got,
yeah,
2019 Bolt 9. So,
yeah, that's cheap. That is real cheap.
and it must have been part of, I'm assuming, because of the replacement. It was probably because of the warranty, the recall. I'm guessing.
Probably.
That would be the case, yeah.
All right. So anyway, so this
Paris. We got completely sidetracked from
we
Paris.
did. Yeah. So the air pollution is down 50% after the radical bike-friendly transformation. They banned cars on 100 different streets. They've gotten rid of tens of thousands of parking spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of miles of bike lanes have been added, and air pollution has cut in half. Now that's got to be a pretty big difference in how people's quality, getting rid of asthma and other breathing conditions and things like that.
And this is where the Israeli guy comes in, because he's asking me, well, what about all the pollution problems with electric vehicles? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my suggestion was, do we all have to have cars? Look at Paris, because they have figured out a way to cut the pollution and still maintain people's quality of life. Of course, they have a really good subway system and things like that. But we don't. If we just have the courage, we don't need to have this car dominant culture that we have right now. We can find other ways to do it.
It's interesting to look at this graphic of what happened in Paris.
Yeah, the animation. Yeah.
Yeah. So
can you bring it up?
Yeah, I'm trying. So when it's bright red, that's bad air pollution in 2002, and then but it really quickly cycled 2002, 7, 12, and then 17, and then 24. So it's going every 5 years, and it just real quickly or thereabouts, just quickly scrolls through this. So it went from 17 to 24, so it jumped 7 years there. But all of a sudden, it's like all the red's gone, and it's just all green. So it goes from the top of the scale all the way to the bottom.
I remember
20 years ago.
Yeah, when I was launching EV World, I remember that there were lots of articles about this, and that's why the city began with odd even days. The pollution was so bad that you could only drive your car on an odd or even day, depending on the last number of your license plate. And that was the beginning to try to tackle this, because the air pollution, when I was getting EV World up and running in the early 2000s, that was a big story I was covering. And now look at the change, right? I mean, it's phenomenal. But that takes courage, and that takes obviously a mayor with some cojones, although she's a woman, but she's got she's
Yeah.
got the cojones to make this happen, and tourists and people in Paris can enjoy the results of it. Now, I'm sure there are people who aren't happy and they wish they could jump in their car and go wherever they want to go and not depend on renting a scooter or pedaling a bike or taking the subway. But it is paid off, and they're going to have probably less issues with, like you say, with asthma and other related health issues. So that's fantastic. And that's why I wanted to bring it up and share
Well,
it with people.
didn't we see something similar with London? They started adding that toll for gas vehicles to be in the center of London. And
Mm-hmm.
since they've enacted
Yep.
that, they've seen some improvements in air
Congestion.
quality
Yeah.
in London as well.
The congestion zone. Yeah, they started central London. Gradually been adding boroughs since then. And of course, they just tried that in New York, and it ran into all kinds of flack. So I don't know if it's still in effect or not. I haven't heard any update on it.
Hmm. So here's something interesting from electric. People have been reporting that BYD overtook Tesla as the top global EV maker
Uh
are
huh.
actually wrong.
This
And
is a
apparently
surprise.
this is a interesting deal. So in theory, BYD sells more electric vehicles, but a lot of those electric vehicles are motorcycles or bicycles.
Well, no, I don't
And
think is the I don't think BYD owns that company. I think that's a separate company, isn't it? Yada or something like that.
okay, so the idea isn't so much that BYD sells more EVs. The idea is that Yadia sells more than
More
Tesla and
electric
BYD combined. Oh,
combined,
I get it.
right?
Okay, so I
Yeah,
see this.
yeah, yeah.
So YADEA, Yadia, builds two-wheelers and three-wheelers and outsells both of them. Now, if that's the case, and I'm assuming we're talking a quantity of vehicles, that would mean that they're selling more than 8 million
Probably,
a year. Um,
probably.
wow, that is a pretty big deal. Now, that's not going to be in revenue, but because his bikes are
No,
much more
yeah,
affordable.
right, yeah. But just sheer numbers of moving people at the right scale, right? A machine that is much more tailored to the scale of a human body than is a Hummer, kind of a type of vehicle, or even a BYD Seagull or whatever.
Globally, since Yadia was founded, they've sold 100 million two-wheelers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
They sell 6 to 8 million electric scooters, bicycles, and motorcycles worldwide. Yeah, that's quite a different thing. So two-wheel cars sell about, or two-wheel vehicles sell about 90 million per year, and
Hmm.
45% of that is EV.
Yeah,
80%,
yep,
80% in China.
yep.
They expect that the total number of two-wheel, um, with an engine to be 1.4 billion by 2035. So that's um,
Heading in the
what
right
would that be?
direction. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that was that just the people asking me there
Mhm.
about yeah, I'm thinking about electric bike because I only live 5 miles from work and I get some exercise and oh, I remember who it was. It was the oh god, anyway, another relation to the family, brother-in-law kind of a thing, who was interesting. He was responsible for the security of State Department facilities in much of the world. So now he works for a company, does security, is responsible for security for a local company that manufactures some type of electronics right there in the Washington, Idaho area. But he was says I only 5 miles. He said and I could electric bike will get me to work and I'll get some exercise and lose some weight and so that's it. People are starting to see it and starting to come around and obviously, it's demonstrated by the number of sales that that Chinese company is enjoying.
Yeah, well, they're saying the media ignores the idea, and because they consider two-wheelers to be more of a hobby than an actual
No,
vehicle. But you look at, some societies, like India, where that cars aren't the norm,
no, but people
and these
riding
other types of
motorcycles.
transportation
Yep,
are more common.
yep.
So it's different to fathom that. Um, but anyways, all right. Well, folks, that's all we got for today. Good show today, and
And
thanks for chiming in.
thanks for showing up and letting me share a little bit of my last few days' experiences with you. It was eye opening. It was really not just in talking about electric bikes and the role of electric cars and things, but even on a much more spiritual kind of a plane because you're obviously dealing with someone in the final stages of hospice care. And I was it was an enlightening and really uplifting experience. So glad I had the opportunity.
All right, folks. Well, Bill and I will be back on Tuesday. Otherwise, folks, have a great week.